My stepdaughter was spending my money when she screamed. "You're not my dad. Stop telling me how to spend my money." I calmly replied, "Okay," and cut off everything. Her freedom lasted exactly 13 hours before she came crawling back. But let me explain the strategic position I'd built over 3 years that made this nuclear option possible. See, when I married Sarah in 2020, I knew blending families required careful financial planning. What I didn't anticipate was supporting a teenager who saw me as a human ATM with inconvenient opinions. My name is Michael, and I'm 42 years old. My income as a senior software architect is $165,000 annually. Sarah makes $78,000 as a nurse practitioner. Combined household income is $243,000. Our mortgage payment is $2,800 monthly on a house worth $485,000 in suburban Denver. I'd been contributing $1,200 monthly to Emma's college fund, plus covering her car insurance at $320 per month, unlimited phone plan at $95 per month, and giving her a $400 weekly allowance that somehow never lasted more than 3 days. Emma was 14 when Sarah and I married, making her 17 now. Her biological father, David, had been completely absent since the divorce when Emma was 8 years old. No child support, no visits, no contact whatsoever. Sarah had been raising Emma alone for 6 years before we met through mutual friends at a hospital charity event in 2019. Here's what Emma didn't know. I'd been documenting every financial interaction for 18 months. My accountant, Robert Chen, had advised me early in the marriage to track all stepchild-related expenses for tax purposes. What started as responsible record-keeping became my insurance policy. I kept detailed spreadsheets tracking Emma's spending patterns. In the past year alone, $4,800 on designer clothing, $3,200 on expensive cosmetics, $2,100 on restaurant bills with friends, $1,400 on luxury accessories. Total discretionary spending beyond basic necessities was $11,900. That's nearly $1,000 monthly in pure luxury spending for a teenager who contributed nothing to household expenses. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March 2023, when I arrived home from work at PM to find those shopping bags totaling $2,147 in a single afternoon. Designer jeans for $340, MacBook Pro for $1,999, Sephora haul for $623s, luxury handbag for $585, all charged to the credit card I'd authorized her to use for school supplies and emergencies. Emma was lounging on our leather sectional, scrolling through TikTok with the casual indifference that had become her trademark over the past year. When I asked about the purchases, keeping my voice level, she barely looked up. "I went shopping with Madison and Chloe after school," she said, as if spending nearly $3,000 was equivalent to buying a pack of gum. When I mentioned that we'd agreed on a monthly spending limit of $300 for discretionary purchases, her expression shifted to something between annoyance and defiance. She reminded me that her mother had given her permission to use the credit card for school supplies. I pointed out that designer jeans and a gaming laptop didn't exactly qualify as school necessities. That's when her voice rose, cutting through the tension like a blade. "You're not my dad. Stop telling me how to spend my money," she screamed, her face flushed with anger. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and final. I stood there for a moment, processing what she'd just said, then replied with a simple acknowledgement. "Okay," I said calmly. "You're absolutely right." The confusion that flickered across her face almost made me reconsider what I was about to do. Almost. But I'd spent 3 years trying to build a relationship with someone who clearly saw me as nothing more than a walking ATM with house rules. That evening, I implemented what I call the biological parent protocol. Within 2 hours, I had systematically removed every financial privilege I'd been providing. First, I called American Express and removed Emma as an authorized user on all 3 cards. The primary account with a $15,000 limit, the business account with a $25,000 limit, and the emergency card with a $5,000 limit. Total credit access eliminated was $45,000. The customer service representative confirmed the changes would be effective immediately. Next, I contacted Verizon and downgraded Emma's line from the unlimited premium plan at $95 per month to basic talk and text only at $25 per month. No more unlimited data, no more hotspot capability, no more international features. The representative warned me that the change would take effect within 2 hours. I changed all our streaming service passwords for Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Spotify Premium, and YouTube Premium. Combined monthly value was $127, small amount, but these were the services Emma used most during her hours of leisure time. The car situation required more strategic thinking. Emma had been driving a 2019 Honda Civic I'd purchased for $18,500 and put in my name. I called my insurance agent, Patricia, and removed Emma from my policy, effective immediately. Then I arranged for the vehicle to be picked up by the dealership for routine maintenance indefinitely. I scheduled the pickup for 7 a.m. the next morning, before Emma would typically leave for school. Here's where my financial planning paid off significantly. I contacted my investment advisor, James Morrison, and halted the automatic $1 in $200 monthly college fund contributions. Over 3 years, I'd deposited $37,800 into that account. Emma had no legal claim to those funds since I wasn't her biological parent, and we had no adoption paperwork. The most satisfying call was to my bank's wire transfer department. I moved $43,000 from our joint household account to my personal business account. This was money I'd contributed over the past year that had been earmarked for family expenses. Technically, Sarah's income alone could cover basic household costs. My contribution had been subsidizing Emma's lifestyle. When Sarah came home that night at p.m. after her evening shift at Denver General Hospital, I was waiting in the kitchen with printed documentation, spreadsheets showing Emma's spending patterns, copies of the credit card statements, insurance policy changes, and bank transfer confirmations. I'd calculated Emma's total cost to our household at $31,520 annually, nearly $2,650 per month for someone who openly stated I had no parental authority. She wanted independence from my rules, I told Sarah. Now she has independence from my financial support too. Sarah initially tried to negotiate, suggesting Emma was just being a typical teenager testing boundaries. I showed her comparative data I'd researched. The average American teenager receives between $50 and $100 weekly allowance and maybe $200 monthly in discretionary spending. Emma's $400 weekly allowance plus unlimited credit card access was equivalent to a $26,000 annual salary just for being 17. Michael, don't you think this is extreme? Sarah asked, reviewing the documentation. Is it extreme to respect her wishes? I replied. She made it clear that I have no parental authority. I'm simply adjusting our financial arrangement to match that reality. We talked until nearly midnight. Sarah tried to find middle ground, but I remained firm. Emma had drawn a clear line, and I was respecting it completely. The next morning was beautiful to watch unfold. Emma came downstairs at a.m., her usual time, and grabbed the car keys from the hook by the front door. I was eating breakfast and reading financial news on my tablet when I heard her stomping back inside 3 minutes later. "The car won't start," she announced, looking at me expectantly. "That's because it's not here," I replied, not looking up from my coffee. "I had it picked up for service. You'll need to take the bus today." Her face cycled through confusion, then anger, then the dawning realization that yesterday's declaration had immediate consequences. She grabbed her iPhone to call an Uber, but the payment kept declining. That's when she discovered her unlimited data plan had been switched to basic. "What did you do to my phone?" she demanded, her voice rising again. I calmly listed each change. Credit cards removed, phone plan downgraded, car access eliminated, streaming services locked, college fund contributions halted. Emma stared at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "These are all things fathers provide for their children," I explained. "Since you made it clear I'm not your father, I'm simply adjusting our arrangement to reflect that reality." The city bus arrived outside with a loud hiss of air brakes. Emma had to sprint to catch it, her designer backpack bouncing as she ran. She'd never taken public transportation in her life. My phone started buzzing around a.m. with texts from Sarah, who was between patients at the hospital. Emma had been messaging her all morning, each text more panicked than the last. She'd tried to buy lunch at school and discovered her usual payment method didn't work. She'd attempted to use the study hall computers to access Netflix and found herself locked out. The brand new MacBook was essentially useless without our home Wi-Fi password, which I'd changed to Not Your Dad 2023. The real crisis hit during lunch period. Emma's friend group had planned to go to their usual expensive cafe after school, a weekly tradition that typically cost $40–60 per person. Emma couldn't afford to join them. For the first time in 3 years, she had to decline a social invitation due to financial constraints. By 3 p.m., Sarah was getting calls from other parents. Emma had been asking classmates to spot her money for coffee, transportation, and even basic school supplies. The girl who'd been living like a trust fund kid was suddenly experiencing real teenage poverty. She came home that evening at p.m., nearly 2 hours earlier than usual. Her typical routine involved expensive after-school activities, followed by dinner at trendy restaurants with friends. But without credit cards or transportation, her options had been severely limited. Emma found me in my home office reviewing quarterly financial reports. Her tone was completely different from the previous day, less defiant, more uncertain. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Of course. What's on your mind? Are these changes permanent?" I leaned back, considering my answer carefully. "That depends entirely on what kind of relationship you want us to have moving forward." Emma shifted uncomfortably. "What do you mean?" "Well, if you want to continue seeing me as just your mother's husband with no parental authority, then yes, this arrangement is permanent. I'll provide basic household necessities like food and shelter, but the extras, allowance, credit cards, car access, college funding, those are things fathers provide for their children." Her eyes widened. "You were really putting money away for college?" I pulled up the investment account on my computer screen and turned it toward her. "I've been contributing $1 to $600 monthly to your education fund since your mom and I got married. Current balance is $37,800. But yesterday I stopped the automatic contributions." Emma stared at the screen in silence. I could practically see the calculations running through her head. How much that money would mean for her future, how much it represented in terms of my commitment to her well-being. What if I apologized?" "Apologies are a good start," I said, "but rebuilding trust requires consistent actions over time. I need to see that you understand the connection between respect and support." She was quiet for several minutes, then asked, "What would I need to do?" I'd been thinking about this all day. "First, acknowledge that household rules apply to everyone, including spending limits and respectful communication. Second, contribute to family responsibilities, chores, helping with household tasks, showing basic courtesy. Third, demonstrate financial responsibility by earning some of your own spending money." Emma looked shocked. "Get a job?" "Many teenagers work part-time. It teaches valuable life skills and gives you appreciation for how hard it is to earn money." That evening, Emma helped clear the dinner table without being asked, the first time she'd voluntarily done a household chore in months. Small gesture, but I noticed. 3 days later, the transformation was becoming apparent. Emma had started walking the 1.2 miles to school instead of expecting rides. Her after-school activities shifted to free options like library study groups instead of expensive coffee shops. She'd begun asking permission before spending any money, even for small purchases like a candy bar from the school vending machine. The real test came when her friends invited her to a weekend shopping trip to Park Meadows Mall. Instead of assuming she could go, Emma came to me directly on Friday evening and asked if there was a way she could participate. "We could discuss it," I said, "but you'd need to contribute somehow." I suggested she could earn money for the trip by taking on additional household responsibilities. Emma agreed immediately, something that shocked both Sarah and me. For the next week, she vacuumed the entire house, did 3 loads of laundry, organized our cluttered garage, and helped with yard work without a single complaint. When Saturday arrived, I gave her $80 for the shopping trip and temporarily restored her phone data so she could stay in contact. Her excitement was genuine, and for the first time since I'd known her, she thanked me like she actually meant it. 2 weeks into the new arrangement, Emma started asking me questions about money management. She wanted to understand how credit cards worked, why spending had limits, how families budget for major expenses. I found myself explaining concepts I'd never thought she'd be interested in. Compound interest, the difference between needs and wants, how to build credit responsibly. Sarah noticed the change too. Our dinner conversations became actual family discussions instead of Emma updating her mother while ignoring my presence. The breakthrough moment came when Emma asked if I'd help her apply for a part-time job at the local Barnes & Noble. She wanted to start earning her own money for the things she wanted beyond basic necessities. I spent an entire Saturday helping her write a resume, practice interview skills, and understand what employers look for in teenage workers. When she got the job the following week at $12 per hour for 15 hours weekly, Emma's hug of thanks felt genuine for the first time in 3 years. A month after our confrontation, our household had settled into something that actually felt like a functional family dynamic. Emma had earned back most of her privileges through consistent responsibility and respect. Her phone plan was upgraded back to unlimited data. She had limited access to streaming services and could use a credit card for pre-approved expenses up to $100 monthly. The car situation remained unchanged deliberately. I'd decided that driving privileges required demonstrating maturity over a longer period. Emma accepted this without argument, and had started saving money from her bookstore job toward eventually buying her own vehicle. What surprised me most was how our relationship evolved. Emma started coming to me with problems she previously would have only discussed with her mother: school stress, friend drama, anxiety about college applications. I found myself giving advice and support that felt natural rather than forced. She also began defending our family rules when friends complained about their own restrictions. I overheard her explaining to someone that rules weren't punishment, they were structure that helped families function effectively. The real validation came during a family dinner in June, when Sarah mentioned feeling proud of the young woman Emma was becoming. Emma looked directly at me and said she was grateful for everything I'd taught her about responsibility and respect. "I was wrong to say you weren't my dad," she admitted. "Not because you needed to be my father, but because I was disrespectful to someone who'd been trying to help me grow up successfully." I told her that earning respect was a two-way process, and she'd shown me she was capable of handling both freedom and responsibility. 3 months later, Emma asked if I'd walk her at her high school graduation ceremony since her biological father, David, wouldn't be attending. He hadn't contacted her in over 9 years, and she'd stopped expecting him to show up for important events. That request meant more to me than any expensive purchase or grand gesture could have. Today, Emma is in her freshman year at Colorado State University on a partial academic scholarship she earned through her own hard work. Supplemented by the education fund I resumed contributing to after she proved her commitment to our family relationship. The account now has $42,600 thanks to resumed contributions plus investment growth. She calls me weekly, asks for advice regularly, and includes me in her major decisions. The financial impact of my strategy was exactly what I'd calculated. Emma learned to live on a realistic teenage budget of approximately $150 monthly instead of the $2,650 she'd been costing our household. She developed work ethic, money management skills, and genuine appreciation for the things provided for her. Sarah and I are stronger than ever. She initially worried I was being too harsh, but seeing Emma's transformation convinced her that tough love was exactly what her daughter needed. Our marriage survived the crisis and emerged more solid. As for Emma's biological father, David, he remains completely absent. Emma has accepted that some people simply aren't capable of being parents, and she's grateful for the father figure who chose to step up when it mattered. The girl who once screamed that I wasn't her father now introduces me to her college friends as her dad, not because I demanded it, but because she chose it after understanding what that relationship actually meant. Sometimes the most effective parenting strategy is allowing someone to experience the natural consequences of their choices. Those 13 hours of freedom taught Emma more about family dynamics than 3 years of arguments ever could have. The lesson here is simple. Respect is earned through actions, not demanded through authority. When someone rejects your role in their life, sometimes the best response is to honor that request completely and let them discover what they're actually giving up.